2022 marks the 10-year anniversary of Roy Maurtsen's fairy tale-inspired debut novel, Shards of the Glass Slipper. A series that spawned 2 books, tons of artwork, a prequel short story, 3 audiobooks, and even a progressive rock album. With a retrospective air, Pad Wolf Publishing's own Patrick Thomas, audiobook narrator Christopher Crosby Morris, and others discuss the incredible fairy tale fantasy adventure epic, Roy Maurtsen's Shards of the Glass Slipper.
Destinies, the voice of science fiction, can be heard on Fridays at 11:30 p.m. on 90.1 FM, WUSB, Stony Brook. It's the same on Earth and Counter-Earth.
Good evening and welcome to Destinies. I'm Howard Margolin, and tonight the voice of science fiction is coming to you live as we speak with artist and author Roy Maurtisen, whose first novel, Shards of the Glass Slipper, Queen Cinder, will soon be released by Pad Wolf Publishing, and is also the inspiration for the latest album by Gene Pool Zombie, Shards. Roy is joining us in the studio.
And I can't believe it's been 10 years already. Wow. Hi, I'm Dr. Howard Margolin, host of Destinies, the voice of science fiction, which is the world's second longest running science fiction radio show that airs on Fridays at 11:30 p.m. on 90.1 FM WUSB in Stony Brook. We were created back in 1983, the show, to promote Icon, back in the day when it was Icon 2. And that, by coincidence, Icon is how I met Roy Maurtisen. He used to display at the art show in his amazingly talented other skill as an artist. And I always was impressed by his art every year when I'd see it in the art show. And I remember when I saw him at a table, the Pad Wolf table, next to Patrick Thomas, who by that year I had already had as a guest 4 times to talk about his prolific output. And Roy had a copy of his book and he said, "Hey, I've written a book now." And I said, "Oh, wow, and you did the cover," which to me amazed me that an artist would turn writer and he would produce the cover to his own book, because I said, wow, what a level of creative control that is when you've got the whole packaging experience in addition to the writing. So I got a copy of the book. In fact, I remember he gave me a manuscript copy of the book. It was even before publication. And because Roy lives locally, we got to have him live in the studio to discuss the first book, Shards of the Glass Slipper, Book 1, Queen Cinder, and then a couple of years later, Book 2, Queen Alice. And it's always nice to be able to have a live author guest in the studio as opposed to over the phone, because most of my interviews I do over the phone, especially when there's a local author and a first-time author who wrote a book that was so cool and so good. I've read a lot of first-time novels over the years, and when you get one that's dealing with a subject matter that's very familiar, fairy tales. At the time that book came out, Grimm was on television, Once Upon a Time was on television, but Roy wrote his book before either of those 2 shows had premiered, so it was a question of great minds thinking alike. And the fact that what he did with the characters and the settings and the story was completely different than anything they were doing on Grimm or Once Upon a Time impressed me, that he could take it and put this cool spin on the stuff and make it for mature readers and make it fun to read. He had an amazing skill with dialogue. And I remember saying this in the interview, you could feel the emotions of the characters. When they had arguments, you could feel the anger and the emotion and the power of that. And again, for a first-time novelist, to be able to achieve that in dialogue is a truly remarkable thing. and I could hear the different voices of the characters. He came up with interesting ways of speech for people like Golden Hair, who at the time in my head sounded like Tatiana Maslany's Russian character on Orphan Black, who also had blonde hair. And I heard her voice when I read that character, and the White Rabbit, who to me sounded like C-3PO. So the fact that I could hear all these voices is a true credit to him, because he was able to come up with individual voices for the characters. I like that. I like that a lot. And on the 10th anniversary of the publication of Shards of the Glass Slipper, I want to wish Roy the best of all possible destinies.
Hey, hello world. My name is Stuart Ott, and I am a musician. I live outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. And I'm here today to talk about a wonderful human being by the name of Roy Maurtisen. He is an outstanding author, photographer, and creative videographer and content producer. I first met Roy back in 2009-2010 timeframe. I was just completing my third studio album with my group Gene Pool Zombie, and the album was called The Pawn. And I needed an album cover to go along with it. And I really needed a really cool piece of artwork to go for the album cover. I came across Roy's portfolio called Chess Pieces, and it was a bunch of different graphic art scenes involving different various pieces of chess and different kind of scenarios. And it was really awesome when I saw his portfolio or his image on the pawn. It was an amazing image, a bunch of pawns lined up, kind of pseudo-science, kind of Star Wars-y at the same time. Really ethereal and eye-catching, and I knew it was the piece that I had to have for my album cover. So I reached out to Roy, and he graciously accepted to work with me and the group to do the album cover as well as the inserts in the back cover. It was a wonderful experience working with Roy on that, and the experience only got better. In the course of our discussions, I told Roy that for my next album, I was looking at doing a more broad conceptual album, something long form, based on a story. I was originally leaning towards Hamlet, and everybody thought I was crazy because it's really big, and it was really big. And Roy mentioned that he was working on a fantasy novel called Shards of the Glass Slipper. And it was a really cool retelling of the classic fairy tale stories about Cinderella, the Little Mermaid, the Pied Piper, Hansel and Gretel, Goldilocks, all in this outrageously big world that Roy had created. And all the characters had different twists to them. We had a great time once we were able to finally convince Roy to let us actually read the manuscript and kind of, it's all pre-publication stuff, and, I could definitely appreciate, and appreciate Roy's trust in allowing us to read the manuscript and develop a musical score to go along with it. Had a great time doing it, fell in love with all the characters. There's a lot of really good numbers in the album that I think really exemplify the characters that Roy had created. For example, Mirror Mirror is a really excellent tune about the schizophrenic nature of Queen Cinder. There's another one that I really particularly like. It's called The Shore, and it's about the Little Mermaid. It's replete with windstorms and surf, and it's a really cool number in 6/8. There's another one called Marionette, which is about Queen Cinder's general. I get to sing on that one, and but I did have a blast. I really equated to that character a lot. Roy's description of Goldilocks and the Three Bears was pretty friggin' awesome. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the warrior bear in the Golden Compass kind of scenario, sort of. But definitely a little bit different twist on that. He did a wonderful job of putting that together. So we did a number on Golden Hair, and I hope you enjoy it. It's one of my favorite numbers on the album as well. It's a really cool song called "If I Could," and that is from the protagonist in the story. It's a number that kind of captures that hesitation we all have when we're faced with something large and that's something we have to do, and we don't know if we can do it. And it's called "If I Could." Again, it's one of my most favorite numbers on the album. I can't say enough good things about Roy. He is phenomenal. His artwork, his creative flair, his style is amazing. Again, I'd like to thank Roy. It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since we worked together to create, not only get his book published, but produce this album based on his stories. So a couple plugs for myself. If you want to read or hear the music that we created, if you look for Gene Pool Zombie on iTunes or Spotify. Again, all 4 of our albums are on iTunes. You can get to them. Apple Music, or Amazon Music as well, Spotify. And if you'd like to hear the work that I've been doing as a solo artist, my name is Kodo Dojo. Roy's been giving me some really excellent feedback on my work, and I definitely appreciate that. And again, if you get a chance, pick up his books. Read it. You will not be disappointed. He's phenomenal. And Roy, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your friendship all these years and allowing me to put your words to music. Thank you very much.
I found out about Shards of the Glass Slipper, not only before it became a book, but before I was even aware that it was a book. I was attending Icon more than a decade ago, and I was going through the art show. And Roy had been entering the art show for a number of years. I had seen his epic chess piece art there many times before. And this year he had entered in Shards of the Glass Slipper art. And I remembered seeing it and thinking it was really neat twist on fairy tales like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, The Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And as the centerpiece of his exhibit, there was a sculpture of a shattered glass slipper that was really amazing. And later in the convention, I was working the Paddle of Publishing table, and I had the chance to meet Roy, and we got to talking, and he mentioned that his art was in the art show. I asked him which pieces were his, and I told him how impressed I was by them. And he mentioned that the artwork was inspired by a novel he had written, and would Paddle Publishing be interested in taking a look at the novel? I'm one of the founders of Paddle Publishing and the creative director, and I said, sure. I read it, so did the other members of Paddle, and we loved it. And we asked Roy if we could publish it. He said yes, and the rest, as they say, is history. Instead of tackling just one fairy tale character, I can't say he mixes them all in there, but he does put a lot in there, and he manages to make their storylines all weave together and puts in ideas that once you read them in his work, you go, well, that makes a lot of sense. Why hasn't someone done that before? And, you are taken to a new world with characters that you thought you knew. It's a great series, especially impressive considering these are Roy's first 2 novels. And for him to be able to write something so brilliant his first time out of the gate is very impressive for any author, let alone for a first time author. Roy is one of those very rare people who is not only talented, but who's a genuinely nice guy, who helps people out of the goodness of his heart. He's a talented writer and artist, and he became the art director for Paddle Publishing, redoing a number of our old covers, making them brilliant, and doing a slew of new covers, which were the equal of things being put out by any other publisher.
Would you sign your story? And since you're the cover artist, would you sign the covers?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So,
you want me to sign?
Really makes everything he touches better, and it's very rare that we get somebody in this world like that. And for someone not only to be that good, but to be as talented as he is, it's a wonderful combination, and I'm blessed to have worked with him and to call him friend.
I'm Roy Maurtisen, artist and author of the Shards of the Glass Slipper series of books. So why did I write Shards of the Glass Slipper? Recently, only about a month from this filming, I came across my baby book, you know, where you record the hair and the weight, and you do the little footprints. And I found in the back, my mom had written a bunch of things about me as a child growing up. And one of the things that struck me was, at a very early age, she had written that I was fond of Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. And those stories have always, I've always loved those stories, I guess, even as a child and even very young. And along that came with, you know, other fairy tales. I had some old books, which I think were my mom's when she grew up. They were from the 1940s. The books were old and had that old book smell, and were, you know, the pages were yellowed, and I still have them. They're on my bookshelf. You know, it was on my bookshelf when I was writing. I constantly referred to them. But it was funny to see that even back then, even at such a young age, I was reading Lewis Carroll. So fairy tales and Alice in Wonderland have always been part of me for as long as I can remember. As an artist, when you draw and stuff, you're telling stories. You know, if you're drawing stick figures, there's a story behind that stick figure. If you're doing an incredible painting like Bob Ross, you know, there's a story behind that little bush or that tree there, or whatever. Sometimes it's a mistake, but it ends up being a story. I just enjoy, I guess, a good story. I gravitated toward role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, a lot can be said about growing up with Dungeons & Dragons. I started playing D&D in the early 80s, around 6th grade, through junior high school, college, and beyond. These are some of my original books that I had from back then. D&D cultivated an interest in fantasy, yes, but also history, mythology, art, reading. It inspired drawing, creating. It was a game of fantasy, of imagination, and a game of storytelling. We created characters that built our own fantasy world to play in. So it would seem that Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games was very instrumental. Finally, with my love of fantasy and fairy tales, I started hatching this story out and decided to write it. And it wasn't easy. It took a lot of work. I'm much more an artist than I am a writer. So the writing took me a long time to finesse and get right and get everything up to snuff with. But it was good enough that I found a publisher and was able to put it out. I'm very happy about it. It's one of the proudest things that I've done in my life, and something that nobody can take away from me. I will always be a published author. As an artist, I even before I started writing the book, I had an idea for the story, enough so that as an artist I could create the art and the look and explore the characters creatively that way, which led to me going into the art show, which I've done numerous times before with the previous series called the Chess Pieces series. But this would be the first time that I would do something in addition to chess pieces. So I had created a bunch of art based on this story idea that I had for this book that I haven't written yet. And this was going back probably about 2006, 2007. So I had artwork and conceptual art long before I actually sat down to bang out the story on a keyboard. Prior to writing my fairy tale novel, I was already a well-established artist and had shown my work at several convention art shows and attended as a guest artist. And being an artist, as I started to entertain and develop the story, I had gravitated to exploring my concept through art. Being familiar with convention art shows, they are generally set up with large sections of pegboards with art hung on J-hooks. And even when I was displaying my chess pieces artwork, it was not something I really liked. It was sort of ugly, not the artwork, the pegboards. So I worked to cover the boards, generally with fabric or paper. But as I developed the Shards artwork, I wanted to improve on the presentation aspect for the eventual art show displays. Not only would there be several pieces of artwork to show, but it would become a more immersive themed multimedia presentation. The display was decorated with vines. We cut foam stone-looking bricks to give sort of a broken castle wall feel to the unused space of the display. There was an LCD screen that displayed more artwork and information, slideshows, and videos, all based on the Shards of the Glass Slipper story. Small speakers were hidden in the display and background audio was quietly playing. Forest sounds, just to add to the ambience and to the immersiveness of a fairy tale theme. But the centerpiece of it all was not going to be the artwork, but a pair of actual broken glass slippers that sat on a lighted display. The glass slippers were professionally broken by a glass cutter, so there were no sharp edges. The shards were secured with a strong epoxy glue to a frosted acrylic base with a multicolored projection light that shone upwards. All of this was hidden within a pillar. The rest of the pedestal was constructed to give a rocky, vine-covered appearance. Everything was broken down into components for easy travel and easy setup, either at an art show or later as part of the display at my author table or as a convention vendor in the vendor room. The artwork for Shards of the Glass Slipper debuted at Icon 26 in Stony Brook in 2007. It did very well in the art show that year and the following year as well. So the response at the art shows has been fantastic up to this point, but now I had to follow through. I had to actually write the story. One of the challenges that I had to set up for myself with the story is that I wanted to feature as many fairy tale characters as I could make sense of. And I didn't want to do a story featuring just one fairy tale or some modern-day reimagining of another fairy tale. And this wasn't going to be some sort of random, hey, this is a fairy tale character, or you know, wink wink, that's a fairy tale character. It all had to work together, interconnected. I also wanted to move my story from just beyond the fairy tales to explore their characters and to explore their lives after the happily ever after, of course. After, you know, how their fairy tales had impacted them and what happened to them. So the fairy tale story became my characters' sort of backstories. So there's this familiarity with the characters to a certain degree. Of course, everybody knows fairy tale characters and the fairy tales, and everyone knows, certainly, of course, the Disney versions of fairy tales. But they're very much Disney versions. So I wanted to draw from Cinderella, of course. And I had to figure out how to get from the typical version of Cinderella that everyone knows into my version of Cinderella that I want to show and explore. I had to figure out how to go from this to that. I had to figure out how to take this character and turn it into my character. From this fairy tale into my story. So when writing the book, I spent a lot of time researching fairy tales, not just watching Disney movies, the original tales, and then digging into the story behind the fairy tales. And I really tried to layer my story with as much fairy tale details and nods and winks and call-outs and callbacks and stuff. There's really, I put in quite a lot. From 2007 to 2012, I was busy writing, revising, rewriting, shopping around to see if I could get an agent or a publisher. And thanks to places like Icon and these conventions, you can make some really great connections and get a lot of education, and you have a chance to be face-to-face and talk with people. And it was through places like these conventions that I was able to talk to Patrick Thomas and Pad Wolf Publishing on numerous occasions, and we had a good rapport. And he was impressed with what I had, and I was the chess pieces guy from the art show and the Shards of the Glass Slipper fairy tale guy. And lo and behold, I was able to get published that way. It's maybe not a traditional route for publishing, but it worked. So that's kind of how all of that ended up. So now that the book was done, the next step was to make an audiobook. And of course, being me, I couldn't just have an audiobook. No, I had to have grand ideas for my audiobook. Much like the art show display that I ended up doing for the Shards of the Glass Slipper art, my audiobook would be similar to that. So I wanted to do a cinematic score underneath it, and I wanted sound effects to kind of punctuate and enhance the things that were going on in the story. I have background in audio and video production, so I would take on compiling everything together. It was going to be a huge undertaking, and I needed a good narrator. And that's when I started talking to Christopher Crosby Morris.
When Roy asked if I would narrate Shards of the Glass Slipper, I read it, and instantly I was amazed at the depth of characterization that he brought to fairy tale characters. It's very enjoyable, but aside from that, there's enough depth there to help me think about what if this is more like what really happened when these characters came into contact with each other. There's not a pernicious evil intent, but these characters get pretty rough with each other. not only human-like ones, but animals. As a narrator, you seldom get a chance to act out, to become those sorts of people. And they speak their own special way, and you get to find the places in your own voice that elicit those characters, those kinds of creatures. And what a joy it was.
It was a growl, a deep-sounding gurgle. As the cloud of dust dispersed, a huge form appeared atop the rubble. It was...
Damn your whiskers, boy. Watch where you're going, the dwarf growled. I would have gutted you thinking you're part of the rat army.
The dwarf threw the leather reins hard into Hamelin's chest in annoyance.
I hope you know how to drive one of these things. I sure don't.
The bears did not intimidate Hansel and Gretel. They were used to hunting and killing animals, even bears. Gretel pulled her sword back and was about to line up a thrust that would fully pierce the bear's heart when Hansel snapped the reins of the horses, driving the cart forward. Gretel lost her balance with a sudden jolt of the wagon and tumbled into it. She fell hard.
When I began reading Shards and Alice, the two books that I narrated for Roy Maurtisen, I suddenly realized that where I was and what I had to portray in the reading was the cradle of fairy tales. Here's a place where all those characters from all those stories came from. Actually, that is the impression. You're dropping in on these creatures and characters who are still at it. And boy, is that fun. Fun for a narrator because, of course, I get to be all these people and creatures. And there are dwarves. There's Rapunzel and Hamelin and Patience and Dendraba, one of my favorites, but the White Rabbit, who I won't give it away, but you should pay attention to the role the White Rabbit plays all the way through. So there it is. It was tremendous fun, but also I had the feeling that I was doing something that no one had done before. And actually, it's very true. The sound effects and music and the way Roy added atmosphere to the spoken words are really special, but they gave it to my ear, and I'm a musician, to my ear a reality that you're not going to find anywhere but in a narrative where you create the movie. I could go on about the way Roy's works feel as a narrator. I could give you my perspective on this or that, but what I really need to tell you is that when you are in this construct, when you're in this book, in this story, you're there because Roy has painted every corner of the space where the story is coming to life, with the special effects, the added sound effects and soundtrack that Roy brought to this. It became something I had never experienced before. It's uncanny, but you're really there. He spends enough time, dwells just the right way to get you to see into the psyches, but into the actual place, beyond the personalities, and watch them interact with a perfect sense of presence in the situation where they are, castle, forest, in a battle, in a mysterious glen in the mist, by the seashore. You're there. As Snow White raced up the steps, she heard the soldiers on the wall whispering, "They're here!" They stood about looking to the north, nervously murmuring and pointing out towards the field. When Snow White reached the top of the wall, she saw a dark line and shape on the distant north hills, flanked on either side by woodlands. In Shards, something extraordinary happens. In a story, in a tale, in an epic, the writer usually tries to imply a denouement, an ending, a climax, and keeping the reader tracking, anticipating a big confrontation or battle or conflict or the end of a long-sought journey, a hard-fought quest of some sort, but a result, a big bang at the end. And here, in these books, it's the journey. If you spend a moment, and of course I hope everyone does, if you spend a moment in Roy's books, in this audible version that we've done, you will be on a trip, on a voyage, and when you close your eyes, and please do, because this is not a special effects bonanza, it is a special storytelling experience, and it just sweeps you away, sweeps me along. And, I'm the mechanic, I'm the guy reading the story. And you'd think, oh, well, it's just professional conceit or something like that. But it's not. It is not. It is a real journey. I hope he continues to write these things and I continue to be able to narrate them.
So it's been 10 years since I first published Shards of the Glass Slipper, Book 1, Queen Cinder. And it's been just really great. There's been a lot of work that went into, of course, researching and writing the book and creating the artwork and stuff for the art show and things for conventions. And then once the book was published, we had a lot of extensive work done for the audiobook, and then of course you had work done for promotional materials, convention appearances, dealer room tables, marketing materials, all that sort of stuff, videos. So a lot of love and a lot of hours went into creating the book, and I just wanted to have a little fun and hope it doesn't come off as pretentious, but I wanted to honor a book that has taken up a lot of my many years of my life that I wouldn't give up for anything. I really enjoyed all the work and all the time and energy that I put into it. So what's been some of the great things that have come from having the book published and everything that's gone on related to the book over the past 10 years? And it's probably been the professional relationships and the friendships that have developed over the years. You know, all of this, of course, would not have been possible if it weren't for Patrick Thomas. So I'm eternally grateful for his guidance and his friendship and making kind of all of this possible. And of course, working with Christopher Crosby Morris has been amazing. We've worked on the audiobooks, and we've worked on many other projects together. You know, I definitely treasure his friendship as well. The work that Stuart Ott and Gene Pool Zombie did has been just incredible, and I'm just so humbled by their effort and their talent. And I always look forward to the next thing that Stuart Ott is working on. And he's just incredibly gifted and intelligent, and just a really nice guy. And of course, Howard Margolin has always been a supporter of you know, all the genres of science fiction and fantasy and conventions, and his support has been just incredible over the years. You know, for myself and the book, and of course for other authors as well. Patrick Thomas is always a guest with him, and he is just a really great person, and I'm always thankful for him for his help in helping me get the word out. But what's been the best part over these past 10 years since Shards has been published? You know, I've got to meet a lot of people and shake a lot of hands at conventions and get to talk to people. Had to sign Kindles, sign books, and sign artwork and stuff, and it's really great to see people respond to my work so favorably. To a degree, that's very satisfying. But I think on top of that, really the best thing that's come from that is it's been an opportunity for me to show other people that they can do things, and you know, hopefully I'm able to inspire some people. That's what I really find enjoyable through this whole process. Anybody can start their novel that they want to do. That's the easy part. It's easy to start a novel. But really what it comes down to is the challenge is to finish the novel. And that's the important part, because you can't do any of this if you don't have a finished novel. You don't have a finished product. Once the product's finished, you can go back and clean it up and change things and polish it and do all that sort of stuff. But you have to have the story complete. So it's one thing to start a novel, but it's an entirely different thing to complete a novel. So to mark the 10-year anniversary of Shards the Glass Slipper, I wanted to put together this video just for fun, and I hope it doesn't come off as too pretentious. It's not meant to be like that. It's really just a celebration of a body of work that I worked hard and spent a long time, many hours, many days, weeks, and of course the past 10 years working on to come together a vision and an idea I had and a story I wanted to tell. You know, this is a very special story for me, a very special book, and the story of everything behind the story is very special as well. So I hope you've all kind of enjoyed this kind of peek behind the scenes, if you will. of how everything got made. So that's the story about the story behind the story. And many thanks to the people that helped contribute to this. Thanks to Patrick Thomas, and to Howard Margolin, and to Stuart Ott, and to Christopher Crosby Morris for their contributions in making this happen. This was a lot of fun to put together, and I hope everybody got something out of it, or at least enjoyed it for a little while. Thanks for watching.